Hello and welcome to the Sixth Pillar Podcast, hosted by retired Chief Neil Gang, CEO of Fourth Watch Consulting. I'm Shalene Finstead with Techne Innovations, and today we're proud to welcome our new sponsor, Virtual Academy Training and On-Site Plus, delivering post-approved training and first responder wellness education. In this episode, we're igniting change with our Ignite 2025 Voices series. And for the next 6 episodes, we'll be featuring speakers from the upcoming Virtual Academy Ignite 2025 Wellness Summit, November 12th and 13th at the Franklin Nashville Drury Plaza Hotel in Tennessee. Today, we're honored to welcome Jeremy Wade, former Seattle police officer, Medal of Valor recipient, and founder of Mission First Alliance. After 13 years of service, Jeremy answered a higher calling to help his first responders find faith, purpose, and identity beyond the badge, bringing powerful perspective to the Ignite 2025 Summit. Chief Gang, the mic is yours.
Well, welcome back to the Six Pillar Podcast. We are super excited about introducing our next Ignite speaker to you today. But I wanted to thank Techne Innovations for all they do to make this podcast work. If you need anything when it comes to your podcast, for web design, for an app design, or you want to publish a book, reach out to Matt and Shalene. They're amazing. And Shalene, thank you so much for the lead-in. I'm excited about introducing our next guest to you. This guy is an industry leader on this topic, and he'll be speaking about topic number 6, spirituality. As you know, this is a touchy topic for some people, not for this individual, not for me. This individual wears his faith on his sleeve. He always has. In fact, we reached out probably back in 2020 where we were going to talk about an event, and unfortunately COVID derailed that event. But I reached out to this individual because every time I did some research on spirituality in our profession, this is the man that kept coming up. And I'm going to let you know, I think we've got it wrong. I think history got it wrong. You know, separation of state wasn't about not having religion in government. It was actually not having government in religion. So we got it backwards. But before we get into the history lesson, let me introduce to you a man of faith, a brother of mine, Jeremy Wade. Thanks for being here with us.
Yeah, thanks, Neil. Just an honor to be with you. Honor to be a part of this event. Just love the work that you're doing. I think there's a couple of things that you said to me early on that just resonated. One of just lived experience. I feel like God has grown me, on the Seattle Police Department, where I served for 13 years, and just grew in my faith then. And just the opportunity to impact, organizational wellness, leadership through spirituality, has been my journey and where I'm at today. But it was not an easy journey. And like you said, I think that this might be one of the most difficult topics, maybe most difficult pillar to, talk on, just because it can be touchy for some, because it's kind of unknown for others. And then really because I think sometimes there's damage done. There's damage done by chaplains that have not done it well, by churches that have not done it well, and then just by those that are working in law enforcement as first responders that don't know how to navigate and live out their faith well. So I think that this is going to be, it is a difficult topic, and it's really one that's ignored by most conferences, by most wellness conferences, as you know. Most won't even go there, won't even touch it. Most departments training will barely go there, will barely touch it. And I think it's a missing link. So yeah, I was with the Seattle Police Department for 13 years. I struggled in my faith. It took me 2 years before I met a Christian on the Seattle Police Department, the largest department in the state. And it's not like where I'm living now in Tennessee, which is the Bible Belt. So it was challenging. And as God started to convict me and challenge me to live out my faith, about 2 years on in my career, after a number of critical incidents and recognizing I wasn't where I, was meant to be as a man of God, as a husband, as a father. But that still was a massive journey for me, not finding resources, chaplain that was more discouraging than encouraging, and just learning what it meant to live out my faith.
Yeah, that was a great summary of you, your history, and us together. I think you hit the nail on the head. And what makes Ignite different is that we are going to talk about this. And we're not going to shy away from that. We're going to stand by our faith. We're going to wear it on our sleeve, and we're going to talk about it. The other thing that we're going to do is talk about leadership. Another absent, I'll say, wellness track at these wellness summits. See, I think we continue to almost act like Big Pharma. We deal with the symptoms, and don't get me wrong, we have to deal with the symptoms. And I think there's great work being done, right? PTSD, the stigma, all those things, awareness, right? We've heard awareness ad nauseum, but we really have to get to the root of the problem. And some of that's spirituality, right? Coming from a place of faith. And the other thing is leadership's at the root of many wellness failures. But where do you see that in a wellness conference? There's nobody talking about leadership. There's no one talking about spirituality. That's why we think this separates us from the other conferences that are out there. Don't get me wrong. I'm not here to talk negatively about other conferences. They have missions. They do well if you want to go to them. But if you want something different, if you want to come to a conference where you're going to learn professional type of tools as well as personal tools, then this is the conference for you. Now, when I said we got it wrong, I think you're right. This has been the missing piece of the puzzle, if you will. And like you said, I think we don't talk about it enough. I think when I get to number 6, sometimes, depending on where I'm at, and I speak about spirituality, it's almost to the point where you kind of just, it's there, but we skip over. We don't take a deep dive into it. And that's why I'm super excited about Ignite. I'm super excited about you. See, I think our profession has got it wrong. I think I said that before. Thomas Jefferson, this is where it all started, right, in America. Thomas Jefferson wrote that letter to Danbury Baptist about the wall of separation. But it was more about the government not getting into religion, not religion getting into government. And I'll give a story that happened to me, and then I'm going to kick it back over to you. I was sitting in my office. I was a lieutenant in Arizona, and a commander comes into my office. He says, "Hey, Neil, can I talk to you for a minute?" I said, "Sure." And immediately like, okay, what did I do, right? That's the way we think, right, in law enforcement. What did I do if someone's coming to talk to you? Closes my door and said, "The chief would like you to take that cross off your desk." And I had a little cross on there with a Bible verse on there. And I said, "No, I'm not going to take it off my desk." And then I said, "What's the authority to take it off my desk?" And we all know, right? If you're ordered to do something, we'll do it. And I said, "Is this a direct order?" And he says, "Well, the chief would like you to take it off." I go, "Well, here's the thing. I would like the chief to come down here and explain it to me himself, not send a henchman in to tell me to take a cross off my desk." I said, "I refuse to do that unless it's direct order." Well, guess what happened when I retired from that agency? The cross was still on my desk, right? The cross was still on my desk. We have to stay convicted to who we are and what we believe in. Tell me about your history. Tell me what you are seeing around the profession when it comes to these two things integrating.
Yeah. I think it was an amazing journey that I had in the Seattle Police Department, from just on patrol, a number of critical incidents, struggling in my faith, trying to reach out and, get involved with our chaplain, which was very much so a struggle. He was the only department chaplain of 38 years and then suddenly passed away with no succession plan. Then I spent the next 8 years as the executive director over the chaplains program and running that. Spent a couple years training all of our new officers on the department. And then my last 5 years as a full-time peer support coordinator, trained the whole department on resilience and wellness in 2018 during our first mass exodus and after a suicide. And then in 2020, after another suicide and right before COVID hit and the riots hit in Seattle, I was a part of a group to bring together our first full-time wellness unit. So that was my journey, getting involved with faith-based ministries over the years too, and finding that there were a lot that were out there, but just no one's got awareness to them. No one knows what they're doing. They're not necessarily working together. So that was the backdrop of my career, and all at an officer level. But for the last 5 years, a direct report to an assistant chief or deputy chief. So I was involved in the wellness. I was involved in the culture. I was involved in, the low morale, the training, all of that. But recognizing in all of that I loved seeing wellness and support for first responders increasing nationwide, but in many areas still tiptoeing around it, still unsure of how to do it, and, whether the political waves are, which way they're going to turn. And then that spirituality piece almost completely ignored. And most departments don't know how to go there, don't know how to touch it. Many leaders don't even know really what the role of a chaplain is, or how to integrate them, or how for them to be an effective, piece of that wellness component. And just through my experience in the department and coming alongside a whole bunch of other departments, I've got to see trial and error, how to do it, what works well. And again, in a hard part of the country, so if some of what I was able to do was working well there, it can translate to other departments around the country too.
Yeah, great points. And I think you're right. I think most, I won't say every, right, but most organizations that have a chaplain program, it's almost like a checkbox. And we have a chaplain program. And you ask the leaders, what does that look like to you? Well, I think they come in, they go to briefings, they go to ride-alongs. okay, it doesn't sound like it's really integrated into the fabric of your organization. And that's where we need to go. And again, I'm a firm believer of that, but people want to believe in what they want to believe in. That's fine. And we'll have resources for that. But if you're going to have programs, let's make them impactful. I think you hit the nail on the head on several different things that you've said today. But one of the things that you reached out, I put a LinkedIn post about clowns. And we talked about what this profession is really turning into when it comes to wellness, right? Pain performers, these trauma dumpers. And I put something about these clowns, and they're out there making a lot of money and little credibility. And you actually messaged me through that about that we're missing something. We're missing that piece of spirituality. And I thought that meant a lot. And I think right then I knew that there had to be a crossroads for us to do some work together. Talk a little bit about that and what made you, actually kind of dive into that space with me.
Yeah. God grew that burden in me in the Seattle Police Department, and just over years of praying and just saying, essentially, here I am, send me, Lord, use me, here in the Seattle Police Department or wherever. And it was a prayer that my wife and I and our family prayed for years, just available. And ultimately in 2021, there were a number of circumstances. God made it abundantly clear that he was calling us to step out in faith. And just, again, in the middle of my career with only 13 years, we stepped out. We moved across the country to Tennessee, bought a house, a sight unseen, and stepped into this space of how do we support our nation's first responders and their families in this area of spirituality, which is mostly ignored. And I was involved in a number of organizations, local, national, and then ultimately 2.5 years ago, we started seeing that there was a major gap in terms of just this isolation and this lack of collaboration and just unknown of how to step into the space. So we started Mission First Alliance as a national Christian first responder alliance, trying to bring together all of the organizations, resources, chaplains, churches, Christian first responders, spouses, just them all together. Because my story of feeling like I was the only Christian in my department, I've heard that all over the country. And then I've heard it among chaplains that feel isolated and alone, that don't know, not connected to others, don't know kind of how to navigate their role. Same thing among churches that have pastors that have a heart for them, but don't know what to do. And then again, among so many of those organizations, so many across the country feel like they're the only ones supporting first responders. And so no awareness of the other organizations, no collaboration. Everyone's just kind of in their silo doing their own thing. And we just saw that we needed to come together in this area of spiritual support for first responders. And how do we all come together for the sake of support and to be more effective? So we started this nonprofit, and yeah, that's kind of the journey for me. And I don't speak at many conferences. This will be the only one I'm speaking at this year, in addition to the National First Responder Networking Conference that we put on. But otherwise, I don't seek out speaking engagements. I don't, I'll refer through this alliance. There's tons of authors, there's tons of speakers, there's tons of trainers, there's tons of amazing resources in this space that I would love to refer them out. But again, once I was messaging you, I just felt like there was something different about what you were putting together. And I just appreciated the opportunity and look forward to it.
Yeah, and I look forward to it too, brother. Not just to have you there, but to sit and listen to what you have to say. I know you talk about this National Alliance. In a little bit, I'm going to give an opportunity for you to share where people could find you. I will throw a shout out, if you will, to somebody who's also in that space, and his name is Mick Yinger at First Responders Bridge. And he has invited me out. I spoke several times there. And honestly, in my speaking career, which it hasn't been that long, but I have been speaking since 2019, that's really the first time I was able to take the stage and share about leadership, about wellness and spirituality all combined. So it was much more impactful for me probably than the people listening. But for me, I actually put a whole program together called Anchored in Faith, and talked a little bit about my faith journey when it comes to leadership, as well as comes to wellness. Now, I talk about this story that, all these things were blowing up 2019, all this wellness was happening, suicide was coming, to the surface. Now we're turning into a multi-billion-dollar industry, which it wasn't at one point. But I prayed to the Lord about, what can I do? I'm in Pinole, barely a dot in a map, but I go, what can I do? I had the passion from a buddy of mine who died by suicide, Asher, and the Lord put it on my heart. And in one early morning, 1 to 2 o'clock in the morning, I sat at my kitchen table and designed something called the Asher model. And then Of course, this summit will go over the astral model. We'll talk a little bit about that. And number 6, because of the 7 points, spirituality is so important, right? Of all the things I could have on there, spirituality has its own segment. So to be able to find a space for a person like Jeremy Wade to come in and speak about spirituality, super excited. And I would challenge that. I would have assumed there's no wellness conference out there that's offering this topic. There's no wellness conference out there that offers Jeremy Wade to come speak about these things. So we're super excited about the Ignite 2025 series. So before we end, I want you to kind of look at the camera. I know we have some leaders out there. We have some future leaders of our profession, which we need them to be spiritual. We need them to be whole so they can shepherd this profession into the future. What would you tell them about, of course, number 6, spirituality, the Asher model?
Yeah, my encouragement would just be to be that courageous leader, to lead by example, even in this area where this may not even be the most important area to some of the leaders out there. Maybe they're not there yet, but still to have the courage to support your troops in this, in the space of wellness and resilience and just taking care of your people well. Everyone recognizes that we are mind, body, and soul. And that soul piece we're ignoring. And more research is coming out talking about moral injury, talking about the ways that we can be impacted on the job. And it's not going to be the trauma support or the physical training that's going to heal that soul wound of a moral injury. The spiritual component is important and is necessary. And don't, turn your back on it just because there's been a chaplain that hasn't done it well in the past. Have the courage to lean into this and to put forth good resources, first and foremost for your first responders and their family members. Too many of the resources are geared towards the community, are geared towards just those that want to wear the uniform and be there for this, the events and the ceremonies and the vacations, and want it to be about them. Like, you need a humble servant coming in this space that is just willing to come alongside and support without it being about them, and putting the first responders and the family members first. And it can be done, and it can be done well, and it can be one of the most critical pieces of that wellness component in an agency, and can be integrated with all the others really well. But you just got to lean into it and have the courage to do it and not be afraid of, like you said, the pushback that might come, but just do the right thing.
Beautiful. I don't know if there's anything else that needs to be said except for to come hear what Jeremy has to say on the 12th and 13th out in Nashville. Now, it's funny because I was just on a podcast and someone asked me about leadership. And they said, well, what book have you given out in your career the most? And certainly I've given out, Simon Sinek books, Bob Chapman books, Maxwell books. By far, Jesus Calling, the daily devotional, is one I've given out so many times. I think Amazon still has it on top of my list in my inbox. I've given that book out more times than I could even count. And it's been the most impactful leadership book and personal journey book that I've given out. So I'm with you. I appreciate you. I appreciate your journey. I know that you're going to make a huge impact when we get together. If you could, before we exit these podcasts, tell people where they could find you before the event so they can reach out if they want to reach out to you and get more knowledge and information.
Yeah, the organization is Mission First Alliance. Our website's missionfirstalliance.com, all spelled out. My email is Jeremy, Jeremy, at missionfirstalliance.com. Email me. I just look forward to connecting, and I'm just very informal, and that's how I'm excited to come, and present and just share, and look forward to even just the one-on-one conversations, just to be able to share what worked well and what hasn't worked well, and how we do this and integrate spirituality into wellness. So I'm just excited for the opportunity.
And we're super excited about having you as well. And again, this is not just another wellness conference, right? It's a summit. It's a call to action. Again, I challenge you to find another wellness summit talking about spirituality as well as leadership. Again, this is intentional. The seats are limited by design, and we hope to see you November 12th and 13th out in Nashville. But I'll leave you with this. Be the spark that fuels that enduring flame that's needed to change what we're seeing in our profession. Again, if you're out there serving with a servant heart and you're waking up every day, you're doing the right things for the right reasons, you'll always be needed, wanted, and appreciated. God bless you. We look forward to seeing you in Nashville.
We extend our gratitude to retired Chief Neil Gang for leading today's exploration of wellness and leadership for our extraordinary first responders. A special thank you as well to our new sponsor, Virtual Academy and OnSite Plus, delivering post-approved training and first responder wellness education. This is Shalane Finstad signing off on behalf of Techne Innovations and the Six Pillar Podcast. Be safe and hope to see you at the summit.